When do you think the first space battle on the moon will be?
There must be some dark spots. Say if I have the moon, if I have a moon base on the near side of the moon, then I cannot communicate to the far side of the moon unless I have some relay system. So if Team A can block the relay communications of Team B, then now A and B have a problem, which means A and B all have to have their enough stations around so they can communicate to every part of it. And whatever pocket becomes important for having that relay communication system, that pocket of land becomes contentious.
I see. So you're saying there's two factions, let's say.
Sure,
and
make it easy.
They both have Earth-facing bases and, space anti-Earth-facing bases. And they both have relay satellites around the moon to communicate from the far side to the near side. And if one of the factions takes out the other faction's satellites, communications goes down, then now they have to start fighting in orbit and on the surface of the moon so they can keep communications up.
Yes. Does the moon have Lagrange points?
I think it does.
Because maybe those are the locations that you battle over to be able to hold your satellites in stable orbit. Yeah, and the Earth Lagrange points. I want to hold my satellite relays in locations and have them to be stable without having to constantly give them gas boosts. So that means the 5 Lagrange points, there's only 5 of them. Those are what I need to control.
And I guess if you use the Earth and Moon Lagrange points, then you would have pretty much constant communication with any part of the moon. Because you could always aim if you're on the far side of the moon, you can always aim towards the nearest Earth or lunar Lagrange point, and you're pretty much good to go.
Bounce a second.
So you're fighting over those Lagrange points for communication purposes.
I actually really like this argument. I think these are the points of control.
Question is, so here's warfare before we fight it is always counterintuitive. Before we fight the war, we always mess it up, like our predictions. So not mess it up. It's just like you cannot know until the war begins. Then you're like, oh, I see why that was important.
Yeah.
So a good example of this is the battleship in World War II. A bunch of people, Japan, England, the United States built a bunch of battleships, and they were completely irrelevant because of the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier could just come in and destroy the battleship. The battleship had no anti-aircraft. It was so vulnerable. I mean, it had anti-aircraft. It was just so vulnerable. So in space, initially we're like, Lagrange points makes a lot of sense to me. But is there a counter that makes them irrelevant?
It's the everything. Oh, I see. I thought you were asking for counter locations, which would be just everything besides the Lagrange points.
Well, you could do, these like sat cubes, these like tiny guys. You just swarm them out there. You just, they're everywhere. They're in orbit everywhere. You just got to find one, and then you got communications. And whether it's the Lagrange point or not, you're good. So now you could swarm communications, and now the Lagrange points you just shotgun Cubesats out from your bases. Ensures communication by swarm.
Yeah. I mean, the only drawback I can imagine to that is that you slowly degrade your orbit over time. At Lagrange points, you get this nice little stable spot where you can more or less just leave your thing there.
But I actually think the degrading orbit of the Cubesats may be a feature. Because eventually they're going to come back out of the orbit. But then you're just shotgunning Cubesats out there. So there's always some density of Cubesats out there. They're always coming back down as well. Maybe if they're cheap enough. I don't know.
In fact, that's how you clear out the old tech for the new tech. You just let gravity suck them in.
That's right. So you can constantly be upgrading your Cubesats while the old ones are falling back down.
So if that's certainly much more secure than holding the Lagrange points, because you only have 5 targets that the enemies can take out. So that means both parties or multiple parties, however many they are, they all compete for this CubeSat sphere around us. This CubeSat shell.
So but all the factions are just spewing Cubesats out into orbit until the Earth and the Moon are just, the energy, we get global cooling because there's too many Globesats blocking out the sun.
Yeah. And it's like super like dark on the surface and like famine or whatever with all the plants today.
That's right. Then the robots rise up and use us for batteries.
Is that a movie?
It's the Matrix.
Is that what caused? I thought it was a nuclear winter.
No, I think it was the robots blocked out the sun with
oh, that's right.
With ash clouds or something that they used on plane. No, I think the humans did it. The humans did it thinking it would deplete the energy of the robots.
Yeah, because it would kill the solar panel. Yeah.
But the real history is Cubesat fountains by warring factions block out the sun, which then gives rise to the machines.
Oh, you can use CubeSats and make like a shiny side on one side, and then you have them assemble into like a big old dish, and it's like a space laser, but it's actually just the sunlight.
Yeah, so self-assembling CubeSats in orbit, creating weapons with sunlight. And then as soon as the enemy comes in to attack the weapon to destroy it, they disperse. And you can take out a few, but then you can't. And then when you leave to go refuel, they reassemble. And then this is terrifying.
I mean, terrifying if they're not ours. I was thinking about humans versus aliens. Like you get this carrier ship, and it just sends out those tiny little cubes, and the alien's like, "What the fuck are you doing with these tiny little cubes?" But then they assemble into this big old like parabola, and it's like just intense laser.
And since they're CubeSats, all the Minecrafters are the ones leading the charge because they can just be like,
I spent 10 hours building this machine that does it itself, and now we have infinite of these.
So actually, Minecraft is now a national security risk. So we got to round up all the Minecrafters, put them in the desert in Utah, keep them Minecrafting for the country.
For the country. Oh, say, can you see CubeSats back? All right.